Hey everyone, welcome back to the Law of Attraction Tribe podcast. I'm your host, Stephanie Keith, and today I have Amber Romaniuk, who is an emotional eating, digestive, and hormone expert with 11 years experience helping high achieving women create a level of body confidence, intuition, and optimal health through powerful mindset healing, self-care, and overcoming self-sabotage with food. She does this through addressing the key negative thoughts, patterns, and limiting beliefs that keep women stuck in the same behaviors for years and decades that they haven't been able to break. Her podcast, the No Sugar Coating Podcast, has 2 million downloads, over 500 episodes, and is listened to in over 88 countries. And Amber, I know we're going to get a little bit into your story of gaining and losing more than 1,000 pounds and spending over $50,000 on binge foods and spending 5 whole years balancing your hormones and digestion. So I'm super excited for this and welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you for having me, Stephanie. I cannot wait to dive in with you.
I can't wait either. We had talked a while back about doing a podcast together. So I've had
hmm
it on my mind and it feels like forever. I'm like, I need to talk to you. I have so many questions and I want to know more about your story. I know we got into a lot of my story when we talked last time, but yeah, maybe you can just tell us about where you started out and how you kind of figured out balancing your hormones was what you needed to do.
So that was just one part. That was like one of the end things after all the mindset and emotional and spiritual healing, really. So we'll go back to the very beginning and I'll give a couple of like summary events that really shaped me into having an issue, a big issue with binge eating and binge purge cycle and food addiction, which is truly what caused the weight gain, weight loss, the hormone issues, etc. So when I was 5, my first day taking the school bus, I was so excited because you think, oh, I'm going to make new friends and yeah, this is going to be so fun. And I get on the bus and the older boys start calling me fat and ugly. And then the whole bus is making fun of me. And I obviously took that to heart. It really hurt me. And that was a wound for me and an identity that I carried for the next 20 years of my life, 25 years of my life, that I'm fat and ugly. And if strangers are saying it, it must be true. And then in my upbringing, my parents, of course, did the best they could. And my mom was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis before I was born. And so I think that was probably a very difficult thing to try and process and even fathom how am I going to deal with this, especially since you slowly lose control of your body. And so I was the only child, and I grew up witnessing my mom in her decline, going through a lot of struggling and suffering. And I just shoved it all down because I didn't want to burden anyone. I didn't know how to talk to anyone about it. And I started to use food to cope unconsciously at a very young age, partially because there was so much sugar and baked goods and all this stuff available at home. And because my mom had a food addiction, I just didn't know about it until I healed myself and witnessed her behaviors. And it was her way of compensating. She felt a lot of guilt. There were certain things we couldn't do together, and food was always in our interactions. And then I started dieting in my tweens and teens. Of course, I'm getting programmed by Hollywood and the media and the magazines and all the fake photoshopped images that you don't know are fake and photoshopped. And then you start comparing yourself, thinking there's something wrong with me because I don't look like all of these women on TV. And in order for me to have love, money, success, etc., I have to fit in this box. So the restriction starts. Obviously, don't love myself. I don't like my body. And then in my early 20s, I had my first serious breakup and I was so hurt I could barely eat. And so I started losing weight really fast. I added in 2 hours at the gym every day, which I don't suggest. And I quote unquote met my goal weight quite quickly. And I thought losing the weight would fix everything. I really did because that's what I'd been programmed to believe by, the weight loss industry and the diet industry and all these industries. And I lost the weight and I just became more critical of myself, picking myself apart, now needing to attain 2 hours of exercise a day, less than 1,000 calories a day. And I just became a lot more critical, more arrogant. The ex didn't want me back. And I'm like, what is the point of doing any of this? Like, it didn't fix anything. And so then this switch flipped, and I went to a barbecue and had my first memorable binge where I ate ice cream cake and a burger, and I stole the chocolate bar off the counter and went in the bathroom and ate it. And then everyone's like, where did the chocolate go? And I'm like, I need to leave. I'm like, and then on the way home, I'm going and getting fast food and ice cream and like binge eating until I'm so full I'm sick. And then, of course, the next day, panicking. Now I've got to go to the gym for even longer and burn all this off. I have to skip breakfast and lunch. And that really started and birthed the all or nothing mentality for me, where I'm either trying to be all in, rigid restriction, diets, over exercising, or losing control with binge eating and completely losing control. I gained over 80 pounds in 4 months, and now was the heaviest that I had ever been, and was losing control with food on a regular most nights of the week, and just feeling unrecognizable. I no longer knew who I was. I was just in this mindset of why is this happening to me? Who am I? I felt so much shame and embarrassment around gaining all the weight. I didn't want to go out in public. I just went to my crappy retail job and came home and really was in a deep state of self-loathing and self-hatred and deep criticism with myself. And that happened for over a year, where I just stayed in that. And it was causing so much suffering. And obviously, things like my digestive health were a mess. My hormones were a mess. My mental health was a mess. I was just so out of touch with myself. And then I had my low point moment. And I'd started to learn a little bit about what binge eating was, what the binge purge cycle was, which I went through that for 6 months, thinking if I purge, then I will not gain weight and it'll be fine. But the destructive behavior that is the purging was obviously just making everything worse. And I did not want to cause serious life threatening health issues if I continued to do it. So I was able to stop purging and I'm like, I got to start owning this. If I'm going to binge, I have to deal with that and not think that I can't, I'm just going to let it go and purge and I'm not going to have to deal with it. So I started to take ownership and responsibility. And then I had my low point moment, which is where I had finished a binge and I'd always throw the food in the garbage because if it's in the garbage, I'm not going to go dig through. And that night I was laying on the couch just crying in pain, thinking, I don't think I'm going to make it to 30 if I keep doing this. I'm so destructive on my body, every aspect of me. And my food started to settle. And of course, that little inner critic voice comes in and is like, well, if it's the last time you're going to do it, you might as well eat the rest of the cookies. And so I went into my apartment kitchen, pulled out my little blue garbage can. I'll never forget it. And I pulled out the cookies and I ate them. And then I just sat on the floor in just the deepest level of shame and embarrassment. Who am I? I just ate out of my garbage can. How is this my life? I'm broke. I hate my job. I'm alone. My 20s are supposed to be like the best years of my life, apparently. And here I am suffering and struggling with this, and nobody knows. But I needed that moment to happen because we get stuck in our comfort zones, even if it's a comfort zone of suffering. I was in denial. I'd convinced myself that my issues with food were not a big deal. Food was my friend.
Mhm.
And yeah, this is just my coping way. And who would I be if I didn't have food as a friend? And so I had fear of change, fear of who I'd be if I stopped using food. I was beyond intimidated and overwhelmed of where I would even start on the journey with the weight, with the binge eating. Like, how do I even deal with any of that? I have no idea. And we get comfortable even if we're suffering. And when we start to think about making change and getting uncomfortable, of course, there is a part of the brain called the amygdala, which is like scanning for threat and scans this discomfort as a threat and is like, no, don't change. And so I just stayed in this comfort zone of suffering for so long. But that garbage can moment crushed my fear of change and fear of the unknown. And now the suffering became a lot bigger than the fear of change, and it catapulted me onto my healing journey, which happened in phases. First, there was a lot of physical healing, then there was a lot of mental and emotional healing, and then there was energetic and spiritual healing. And then it was like the blend of energetic healing was happening along with the balancing the hormones and the digestion. And then I started my business.
I just have like chills hearing your story because I feel like probably everyone listening, maybe not to that degree, but I feel like so many people go through something very similar with food. And I know just in my life, there's never been anyone like really talking about it or
Hmm.
explaining what is a healthy way to lose weight or take care of your body. Because I went through something similar too, where I totally used food for emotional support, basically. Like I had anxiety since I can remember, even in
Hmm.
elementary school. And that was always a comfort. Like every night we'd sit and eat like a bowl of Cheetos or Doritos or whatever. And it was like a coping mechanism. And, when you get to the age where you start liking boys, and then it's like, well, none of the boys like me, they like all
Hmm.
the skinny girls. There's no one there to tell you, like, well, how do you take care of your body and lose the weight? So I remember, like, all through middle school, I would just starve myself and I
Hmm.
would bring to school, like I wouldn't eat breakfast. I would bring to school a can of Coke and a bag of goldfish crackers because I knew
Mm,
that was like enough to fill me up and keep me from like passing out. And I look back at that and I'm just like, this is so crazy that not one person was like, hey, that's not very healthy and you
yeah.
shouldn't do that. So that brings me to, because you mentioned all of these, you mentioned emotional eating, binge eating, and food addiction. Is this all one and the same, or are these like different things? Like, what are the differences between them?
Yeah, so there are differences between the behaviors, but they all root from the same place. So, first, the differences. So, you could be an emotional eater and it could be minor where you're just eating like half a chocolate bar. You're eating a few handfuls of chips or popcorn. You're not eating a large amount, but you're still using food to cope, to numb, distract, check out, or shove down feeling something. You're procrastinating, so you're using food. You're avoiding dealing with something. The reasons we do it are all the same, and it's for those reasons. And we want that dopamine high, right? We want that feel good, euphoric, pleasure few moments. We're chasing that reward feeling. And then you can get into the point where you're still emotionally eating, but now you're eating until you're full. You're eating a whole chocolate bar and a bag of chips, or you're eating 6 donuts instead of just one, and your quantities are increasing. And then binge eating is the loss of control. So you're eating until you're so full, you're sick. You eat one thing and it triggers you to want to eat the rest of it, like the whole box of cookies or 2 or 3 bags of chips, but it's literally until you're so full you're sick. And then of course some people purge because they think that's going to resolve the binge. And then the food addiction to me is the full-blown obsession and addiction and asphyxiation with food, whether you're trying to gain control with food via diets, restriction, calorie counting, things like that, any kind of diet quick fixy kind of stuff. You're obsessing about your next meal, making sure that it's going to be perfect, and or you're obsessing and thinking about your next binge, your next emotional eating, episode, you're fantasizing, obsessing, craving, but literally most of your thoughts through the day are consumed with food and trying to control food or with your body and your weight or all of the above. And so that's to me is food addiction is just you're chasing this constant high of wanting to lose weight and have control with food and have a diet fix you, or you're chasing the next dopamine high via overeating, binge eating, or emotionally eating. And it consumes your mind. It really consumes every aspect of your day when you're in a food addiction.
Well, and it's interesting because you're consciously having these thoughts, but I'm sure there's a lot happening at the subconscious
Oh,
level
yeah.
as well. Like when you said there was that experience that you had as a young child where people were making fun of you. And as an adult looking back, it could seem like, oh, that happens to everyone. But I mean, for a child, that can completely destroy them and
Yeah.
stay in their subconscious and rule their life.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what is the reason it's so hard to overcome these struggles? Is it the subconscious part? Like, what's happening that makes it just this constant thing where you're dealing with it for decades?
Yeah. I think there's a few layers, but I do think the subconscious programming plays a huge role. So I think part of it, of course, is yeah, we're so programmed from age 0 to 7, 0 to 10-ish, with all our main beliefs, thoughts, behaviors, survival mechanisms, whether it's like, I have to people please to be validated by others. And then as you evolve into an adult, people pleasing turns into burnout, overwhelm, and emotional eating becomes your only little break that you have, right? Because you don't feel good enough and you're putting all your worth in other people's hands. Not feeling good enough and not feeling worthy is a root fueler of all these behaviors because you have a lack of self-love. You have this void that you're trying to fill with food or alcohol or shopping or whatever that you'll never fill with anything external. And because we're not taught how to address the roots of any of these behaviors, and because it's not talked about enough, and almost emotional eating is encouraged. You listen to some of the food commercials, it's like just eat the whole pint of ice cream, just eat the whole thing. You deserve the reward. Competitive eating on YouTube has become this huge craze and millions of views of these people literally binge eating like massive amounts of food. So you're sadly seeing some people trying to like normalize this when it's not normal at all. But the self-worth thing is a huge part. Another aspect is a lot of the foods are made to be highly addictive on purpose. They're designing these foods to give you the perfect dopamine high so that you keep craving them and so that you have to eat all of it. And then you go and buy more and they justify, well, it's cheaper and the packages are shiny and the marketing is so good. So the food industry has done a great job of being one of the contributors to food addiction. Then you have the weight loss and the diet industry that are convincing women, especially once you lose the weight, you'll finally be happy and be able to live your life. Oh, you just need a diet. You just need to try harder. You just need some willpower. You need to just learn how to count your calories. And they're selling you all these quick fixes, and none of them are telling you what's at the root of your issue because they want you as a lifetime customer and they know how to feed off of your unworthiness and your desperation. It makes them trillions of dollars. So we see the way these big systems have really contributed. Look at Hollywood media, the editing, the photoshopping, praising really thin women. And then like they're all promoting the diets, the weight loss, the crappy food. And so if you're idol worshiping celebrities, you're going to do what they're doing. And that's what they want. They want these people to influence you and not have you discern and make your own choices. So for some people, that plays a role. And then I think the other piece of it is we're not taught how our brain works. We're not taught the difference between the conscious and subconscious mind. If I would have known that every night when I binged, I was literally wiring a habit or a pathway, a neural pathway in my brain that was getting stronger and stronger and stronger. And even on the nights that I didn't want to binge, I felt such a strong urge to do so. I'm like, what is wrong with me? Like, I don't even want to do this right now. And that this pathway is literally lighting up, telling me to go and binge. Like, that was a brain mind blowing moment when I learned that and was able to be like, wow, I need to dissolve this pathway. It's so strong at night. We're not taught, most of us have low dopamine levels and low serotonin are mood boosting neurotransmitters. And when you have low serotonin and or low dopamine or both, you're far more likely to get into addictive tendencies and chase quick fix dopamine highs. So we're not taught about any of these root fuelers that are fueling these behaviors. And then we just, again, get into this comfort zone where it's familiar, even though we're suffering and we're afraid to change it because change feels scary, right? So those are
Oh,
some of the key reasons.
absolutely.
There's so many actually as to why it's hard to change it because it's just not being taught or educated properly, in my opinion.
I have a question about the binging at night because that's totally like to this day, I could be perfectly good all day, eating healthy, and then it's like as soon as it's dark outside, I'm just wanting all of the snacks and everything.
Mm.
So is that just because I've built that neural pathway since childhood, or is it like later in the day your dopamine wears off and you're like, how does that work? Is there what's your take on that?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing is, yeah, once you wire that pathway, and if you've had it for a very long time, it stays strong until you start to dismantle it and break it apart. That used to be my most vulnerable time, and I don't eat at night now. I haven't for years. Um, but it took a while to break that apart and build a different pathway that was more supportive for what I wanted. I think the other thing as well is depending on your hormones. So, yeah, part of it could be if you already have low dopamine, it could be that also kicks in as well. And this is my pathways lighting up. Ooh, I want reward. And so then also what's happening is your hippocampus, which is your pleasure center of the brain, is lighting up and going, remember when you felt this the other day and then you ate the thing and you felt so good? Like you should do that again. So our this hippocampus stores these pleasure memories, but there's no part of the brain that stores how crappy you feel afterward and the costs of, continuing to engage in the behavior. So that's lighting up. And then say you have a cortisol stress hormone issue, your blood sugar's off, you're going to have more cravings and or feel more urges to eat at erratic times of day or night. You have increased appetite level if you have high or low cortisol. So things like that will definitely also make it easier to want to just go to the food. And if we are still eating some of these really highly processed things, I believe we can get to the point where we can eat a highly processed food product and not be triggered to lose control. But these foods lower our vibration. And when our vibration drops and our frequency drops, we're far more likely to stay engaged in low vibration behaviors like binge eating, hanging out with people that are we know are not good for us, mindlessly spending money on stuff that we're going to regret the next day. So I think there's a array of different things that are happening in the evening that create the strong pull.
I love that you said, is this going to raise my vibration or lower it? Because that's something that clicks with me. Like if I were to just ask that question, that would probably stop me from, eating whatever is, filled with chemicals, which that's a whole other thing
Mm-hmm.
that just enrages me. I know you're in Canada, right? And I'm here in the United States, and it's just a lot's coming out about what's in our food. I used to work for the biggest global brand, and just seeing like the tens of thousands of chemicals that are
Mm-hmm.
allowed to be in the food, and then that could then completely disrupt your
Yeah.
hormones in your body and cause an imbalance. That, and I also worked for big pharma, same thing. And that's
Mm-hmm.
kind of what you were telling me when I was explaining to you what happened when I came off of Effexor, and almost instantly the weight just fell off. I lost 17 pounds very drastically. And I knew it, like intuitively, I knew this is causing uncontrollable weight gain.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to I think 5 doctors total, including multiple specialists, and they all just were gaslighting me. Like, no,
Yeah.
this drug does not cause weight gain. If anything, you should be losing weight. And it's just you're just aging. Like it's just part of life. You get older and you just gain weight. And thankfully, I was not willing to accept that
Yeah.
because I'm like, I know my body and I know something's not right. But I had to go and find a neurologist in order to get any help with it.
Mm.
So, anyhow, then when I was talking with you, you were like, yeah, that probably threw your hormones way off.
Mm-hmm.
So, maybe you could talk about that because since I did that episode, I've had a lot of listeners reach out saying, I'm on that same medication or I'm on another
Mm-hmm.
anti-anxiety, antidepressant. They're given out like candy.
Yeah.
Talk about how that disrupts your hormones.
Yeah. And to tie that in, look at Ozempic now. You
Yeah.
talk about causing a mess in your body and with your appetite and your hormones and everything. And I'm happy to share about that after this
Yeah.
because people need to know and be educated about what could happen and that it could
Especially
cause
when
binge
they're
eating
getting
and
it
things.
approved for
Oh,
children 6 years old.
very, yeah, not okay. Yeah. So what happens, with these medications and I get it. Sometimes medication is needed. Like people are going to make their choices. But what we have to look at is when we start this, number one, we're suppressing everything. So the feelings get suppressed, emotions get suppressed. That's going to ramp up your nervous system. So even just that could cause more of a stress response. And the more of a stress response is going on in the body, the easier it is for your body to put on protection because your body's sensing stress as a threat. And if the body's not expressing feeling and expressing emotion and letting it out, it's got to build up somewhere. And so it really hits the adrenal glands, which produce your cortisol, your stress hormone. And I mean, maybe you had high cortisol before you went on this medication and they're like, oh, you have anxiety? Yeah, take this to resolve your anxiety. But anxiety is largely tied to a cortisol imbalance and blood sugar issues. And it amplifies anxiety if we don't know how to deal with them that way and being a sensitive empath and not knowing how to deal with that as well. But cortisol is one of the first hormones that starts to go off. And the brain is like, oh my gosh, we need you to stay alive. You're in this fight or flight stress response, not only potentially from the suppression of emotions or whatever, but like life, what's going on in life, that's probably causing specific stressors as well. And your body's first job and brain is to keep you alive because your body thinks there's a bear running around you and that the bear's going to attack you. So the brain tells the body, shuttle cortisol to the abdomen and put on weight because this is where we have vital organs. And the body's like, that bear is going to attack. We need to do our best to keep you alive, right? So we, especially women, a lot of it will be shuttled to the abdomen, and then women are upset because they have like a tire around their waist or their midsection, or their pants fit tighter. It feels like their stomach is sticking out, and then they're being told to like eat less and do more cardio, and that's just putting you into more of a stress response and makes it easier to keep putting on the abdominal weight or just weight in general. Your face gets puffier, your rings fit tighter, you feel more inflamed, you're retaining more water. This is that stress response and the protection response of your body trying to keep you alive, right? So it doesn't surprise me that you came off this medication and all of a sudden your body's just like letting it go because you took the lid off of partially what was suppressing these aspects of you, right?
Yeah.
And then it's a domino. So if we don't deal with the cortisol thing, then it can start to negatively impact our thyroid. Women end up with really low progesterone. And all of these key hormone imbalances make it really easy to gain weight and feel really difficult to lose because number one, these labs are not being requested on a regular. I used to have to fight with my clients for their doctor to do the tests. So I'm just like, I'm done getting your doctor to do it. Let's just do it ourselves and cut out the middleman and get all the information. And number two, they're like, yeah, my doctor did all the tests, everything's normal. And it's like, no, the ranges are way too big. And the likelihood of it actually being normal is actually very small. So you're getting misread. And then you're just being told it's all in your head. So that's some of what I see with this suppression, and then the way it impacts the nervous system.
Well, that was the biggest key takeaway and why I decided to do an episode on it because I was like, you really have to take your health into your own hands.
Hmm.
And when you have five different doctors telling you, no, you're imagining it, and you know your body and you know you're not, you have to take control of your health
Hmm.
and trust your gut, trust your intuition. So if someone's listening, like what would they do? What tests should they be requesting um, in order to see what their numbers are, their hormones? What are the big ones?
Yeah. So it's important that you get your morning cortisol tested, your T3, T4, TSH, those are thyroid, progesterone, estrogen, testosterone, DHEA, inflammatory markers as well. But here's the thing, be prepared to go to your doctor and advocate for yourself. And maybe they're willing to do it once, but be prepared that they're also going to shut you down and not even do half the tests or question, why do you want this done? And if that's happening to you and you've already tried and they're shutting you down, it's important that you're willing to get a second opinion and that we start to normalize the fact that we might have to pay for some of this ourselves.
Mhm.
Because if you can't get the answers, you're out, right? So start to get comfortable paying. It's like we normalize paying $1,000 for a phone. We normalize $100 a month Starbucks habit. If you have the money to do those things, you have the money to pay for some testing if your doctor won't do it.
Mhm.
So I think that's the first thing. And then the second thing is if they order the tests and you go in to get them back and they just take a quick breeze through and they're like, yeah, everything's fine. You're good. It's just in your head. Big red flag. Like I said earlier, the ranges are too big. So what I suggest is even if your doctor goes through everything with you and says, "Oh yeah, everything's normal," or your cholesterol's high, or your thyroid, we'll have to watch that. Go to someone that's in a more natural, holistic realm because they're probably going to read through the results in a much different way. And more importantly, you deserve to understand what those tests mean and what your symptoms are and how those imbalances in those tests could be correlated with your symptoms. And then what are we actually going to do? What are the steps we're going to take to help you balance those hormones? And what do you do if you have multiple hormone imbalances at the same time? How do you deal with that? But we must get the proper information and testing. We must do the proper health assessing. Please don't go to ChatGPT or Dr. Google and be like, I have these symptoms. What hormone imbalance do I have? We need to see the numbers
Mhm.
because high cortisol is treated a little differently than low cortisol. And if you have a cortisol and a thyroid issue, you've got to look at certain supplements and things that are not going to be a match. And say you have a cortisol, estrogen, and a thyroid issue, well, certain things that help with estrogen are going to suppress your thyroid. So be willing to work with somebody who knows what they're talking about and has the education who can really help you out with this because otherwise it can turn into a big mess. I have clients who go to see doctors, they test once, throw them on all this HRT, like extremely high doses, which is crazy, and then they're not retesting in 3 or 4 months. And all of a sudden they're gaining weight, they're having all these menopausal symptoms or like weird things happening. They're growing hair because their testosterone went from like a 7 to 150. Like that's not normal. So you also have to understand that you are, like you said earlier, responsible for your care. And whomever you're working with, especially when you're making changes with hormones, whether you're using supplements, foods, HRT, whatever, you've got to be monitoring this stuff regularly.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know here in the States, doctors have to go off of the guidelines from the American Medical
Yeah.
Association. And the problem with that, I had a doctor actually explain this, and I appreciated her explaining this to me, but I was like, what the hell? Because she's saying, if we veer from those guidelines in any way, we open ourselves up to malpractice lawsuits. So they're, even if the guidelines, I mean, there's like no room for adjustment, which I just think is absolutely wild. And
Hmm.
like we had mentioned earlier, Ozempic is now like they're pushing that everywhere. They're
It's
approving it
bad.
for 6 year olds for weight loss. So as someone that deals with this for a living, let's talk about that because I mean, I'm sure there's a ton of people listening that are either on it or their doctor
Hmm.
offered it. And just speaking of that, when I went and was trying to get off of Effexor, and my primary care doctor was telling me she's not touching that. She absolutely will not take me off of that, but she will prescribe Ozempic
Hmm.
off label for weight loss. So I'm like, you'll prescribe something off label that has all these side effects, but you won't take me off of something. And it
Yeah.
was just so wild to me. So what's your
Yeah.
thoughts?
Yeah. Well, number one, they're getting commission, right? So a lot of doctors are getting paid a lot of money to prescribe all this stuff, which is unfortunate that that's the game for them. There are some doctors that really do care. And I respect what you'd said about this doctor talking about malpractice. And that just goes to show you how much doctors' hands are tied to big pharma and that they don't really have the power and the control, right? Which is not a healthy medical system. It's a broken system. So, but this is why, like, it's important that you take your health into your own hands and go and seek out other healthcare professionals that look at the ranges at a smaller place and can actually like read between the lines and give you that information, right? So, I do that with my clients. I know like naturopaths and other people, like, they're there. So, pertaining to Ozempic, the issues with Ozempic, it's a blood sugar medication. I know people who can't get their Ozempic. They're type 2 diabetics. They can't get it because it's selling out because of all this big weight loss craze. So, what I'm noticing happening is women are taking this. Number one, their doctor is not at all first going, let's do your labs. Let's see your thyroid function, your cortisol. Let's look at your sex hormones. Is your inflammation high? Is your blood sugar off? What's your relationship with food like? How do you sleep? Are you drinking enough water? Let's talk about your nutrition. How's your stress? Why are they not asking any of those questions first that are fueling weight gain? Weight is a protective mechanism. Your body is hanging on because she does not feel safe. A lot of that is emotional. It's because you're burnt out, you're last on your list, you don't feel good enough, and you're fighting with your body and food. A drug cannot fix that. That is behavioral and mindset work. So, first poo poo on the doctors is they're not asking any of these questions. And that's a huge red flag. So then, right, you go on this and maybe you have binge eating and they're like, oh, it's great for binge eating. It'll shut your appetite off. Well, it's suppressing everything. So, Ozempic suppresses your ghrelin, which is your hunger hormone that makes you hungry. The problem is, as soon as you come off of it, your ghrelin skyrockets and you have a significant increase in appetite and hunger. And you're far more likely to go into binge eating behavior or have even worse binge eating behavior than you did before you went on it. Okay, because it's just being suppressed. Ozempic doesn't fix your binge eating triggers. It doesn't help you become aware of them or learn healthy ways to cope. So why wouldn't you just go back to that when you came off of it?
Right.
So there's that issue. Then there's also the issue of it suppresses thyroid function. So as soon as you come off of it again, it's so easy to gain weight because you're not eating enough. That suppresses your metabolism. Even in as little as 4 days, you start to suppress your metabolism. And gaining weight will become a lot easier once you're off the drug. So I see women with all kinds of hypothyroid, sluggish thyroid issues, or it's making Hashimoto's worse because this is suppressing metabolism. You're not getting your fuel and your energy. It's also causing gastric paralysis or slow emptying of the stomach. And this is what happens. So the Ozempic shuts off your ghrelin, makes your stomach empty at a slower rate. And then that way you feel fuller longer. So some women are having serious constipation issues. They're not moving their bowels even more than once a week, which is a huge concern for toxicity, cholesterol, all kinds of things. And then again, when they come off of it, their system is so slow, partially because when you have a thyroid issue or your thyroid gets sluggish, you don't produce enough thyroid hormones to stimulate the contraction of your intestines to move your bowels along efficiently. Constipation is a number one sign of hypothyroid, sluggish thyroid, or Hashimoto's thyroiditis, the autoimmune. And then, if you're not moving your bowels regularly, it's so easy to be inflamed, more toxicity, higher cholesterol. And then you're getting frustrated with yourself because you think that, why isn't this working? I'm gaining weight. It's like you're hanging on to all this toxicity. Your body's not moving it out. It does also increase cortisol levels, which is that stress hormone, because you're not eating enough. You're not eating enough. This is not a natural cue for the body to not have a hunger signal, to not eat regularly. It's shutting all these things off. Some women are becoming suicidal because it's suppressing their dopamine to like a concerning low level. They literally have no more desire to do anything. They feel so much apathy and indifference. They're not finding any kind of stimulation because it shuts all of it off. So this is some women, like that is very concerning. So these are some of the things that we are seeing with this. And then like I said, you have to stay on it to maintain your weight loss, to not binge. That is not a resolve. That is a quick fix, and that is a very concerning quick fix. I saw a video of this woman, she went on it to deal with binge eating. Her doctor told her it would be a good idea. She was on it for a couple of months, I think. She ended up with osteopenia and osteoporosis at 24, such significant bone loss that, as they say, will not be reversed. Why is this not being
Terrible.
talked about?
Well, that and muscle loss too, right? They're
Yes.
saying you're losing a lot of muscle to where it's just scary. It's dangerous.
Yes.
It's so frustrating. I feel like we need to hit the reset button on
Hmm.
everything, our
Yeah.
food industry, the healthcare industry. Um, the whole thing is so corrupt and it's so aggravating. But the positive aspect is like once you realize that, you can then take control.
Yeah.
And just like, I did not stop until I found someone that could give me answers. And then talking to you, I found even the next layer of answers. And, you know, that's really where you have to be an advocate for yourself and
Yeah.
not let this gaslighting like silence you.
Yeah. And not be willing to be like, oh, I'm just gonna like do another quick fix because everyone else is doing it. And stop picking the easy way out because there's a lot of consequences, especially with this Ozempic one. It's not the easy way out. Be willing to do your deeper work. We need to normalize addressing the roots and doing our deeper work to heal.
Yeah, absolutely. So what would you say would be a good starting point for people that are listening? I mean, obviously getting the hormone panel, or at least asking, trying, looking around to get that and get someone who can actually read it. What else? What would you suggest?
Yeah, so we've got to work on healing your relationship with food because if you can get all the hormone testing done and be put on the most pretty protocol and nothing changed because it's so stressful for you to be fighting with your body and food. So get support or start listening to podcasts and resources that talk about emotional and binge eating and talk about the roots of it. I talk about it all the time on my podcast, the No Sugarcoating podcast, because it is truly like so important. Become aware of what's triggering you to want to binge or emotionally eat. Start asking yourself the question before you go to food. Am I physically hungry or is this emotional hunger? Do you know the difference for yourself? You can start to build a lot of awareness on your own and start to realize how much of your desire to go to food is actually emotional. Usually for my clients, it's 90%. Be willing to start to build a self-care practice to have time to feel through emotions, to get calm and grounded, to feel some inner peace, to connect with yourself, to detach from the busyness of your day. If we really want to heal and make changes and we want to see our hormones balance, we cannot be running around like chickens with our head cut off. We've got to start prioritizing our health and well being. And like I always say to people, if you have time to scroll and time to binge watch Netflix, you have got time to do your healing and to tend to yourself. Again, that's all programming and guilt and stuff that we have to heal. Be aware, are you in a diet mentality? Are you chasing the number on the scale? Are you tying the worth up with the number on the scale? Are you people pleasing and tying your worth to what other people think of you and needing that validation from them? These are understanding your core habits and behaviors and why you're in them is really going to help you understand what steps you want to take next. Eat regularly through the day. Stop skipping meals. Skipping breakfast is the worst thing women can be doing, especially if they have hormone issues. Before you go to fasting or you go to these extreme diets, you've got to see what's going on hormonally. And if you have any kind of self-sabotaging relationship with food, like we've talked about to get today, those things are not going to do you any good. We've got to normalize eating regularly through the day.
So intermittent fasting, you're saying no go. Because I feel
It
like I hear that all the time. Intermittent fasting, everyone should be doing this. It's like hitting the reset button, but your take is that it's not. This is not good.
No, because 90% of the female population is struggling with some form of emotional relationship with food and body image issue. So we need to heal our relationship with food because it becomes another quick fix. Oh my gosh, I can lose weight fast. I can drop 10 pounds in a week. Let me intermittent fast. And then they restrict and then they bounce back in binge because they weren't eating enough. And it just fuels the all or nothing. So maybe for a small amount of the female population who has a healthy relationship with food and their hormones are in the right place, it's appropriate for a period of time. But if your cortisol is too high or too low, intermittent fasting isn't for you. If you have a thyroid issue, you've got a blood sugar thing, well, maybe if it's just blood sugar, but usually with blood sugar issue comes high cortisol, and that's just going to stress things out more.
Mm. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, I think everyone should go binge your podcast, the No Sugar Coating podcast, because you have like over 500 episodes. I mean, you're just
Yeah.
a wealth of knowledge. I would say that would be a great point for everybody to start. And where else can everyone find you? How can they connect with you? Do you do sessions for both the US and Canada? Like, give us all the information.
Yeah. So the website is amberapproved.ca. And if you're wondering if you're struggling with binge or emotional eating, I have a free quiz you can take, and you're going to get some episodes of the podcast and things to start planting seeds of awareness. I do offer a 30-minute complimentary consultation on Zoom, and anyone in the world can connect with me. So I have lots of clients in the States, Canada, Europe, etc. So feel free to book in, fill out a quick intake and pick your time. And we can talk about what's going on for you, your struggles. Maybe this is the first time you're going to get this off your chest that you're struggling with this. I get what it's like to keep it inside and it doesn't feel good. So even if you want to just reach out and share it, and we can talk about going on the journey. And then I do have some great resources as well on the website: a free emotional eating masterclass, a weight loss box masterclass. Talk a lot about hormones as well. And then I'm on social, Instagram and YouTube. It's just my name, Amber Romaniuk, Romaniuk.
Amber, thank you so much. I feel like this is a big wake up call for a lot of people because, again, I'm sure everyone listening can relate to one aspect or another that we talked about today. And I'm just glad that you're speaking out. We need more people talking about this and more resources available to wake people up to what's really going on. So, thank you so much for coming on and just sharing so many different things.
Well, thank you for having me and holding this space so I could share my voice. I really appreciate you.
All right. Well, I will link everything in the show notes so everyone can go check out that free quiz and connect with you. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in. We'll see you here next time.